We're going to give you a preview to World War III next.
The program you are about to watch is part of a free series we are making available to you as a gift from Greg Fritz Ministries, entitled 7 Undeniable End Time Events. Visit gregfritz.org to download the MP3s and watch the streaming video for free by entering code FREE at checkout. Are you tired of hearing bad news? Tune into the good news of the gospel. Welcome to Good News with Greg Fritz.
Hello, I'm Greg Fritz. Welcome to the Good News program. We're doing a new series on end-time events. In fact, I call it 7 Undeniable End-Time Events. End-time teaching in a way that you probably never heard it before. And you are going to want to get these study notes. If you've never gotten my study notes, you should get these. I have compiled this information from several resources, including the internet. Yes, Google. I got in there and dug out these facts, and we have divided these 7 events up in the outline with all these details and reference materials. I did all the work for you, and so that you could have those notes. And if you'd like to get this video series, the TV series, you can get all 20 episodes. You can get them free if you want to download them or stream them. If you look at the free download section of the website, or you can send an offering and get the USB version, which will have audio and video, and you can get that and put it along with the study notes, and you have an end-time Bible study. And so we have listed these 7 events in the order that I believe they will occur in. However, if I'm wrong, we can just move them. It's not going to affect our lives. You know, end-time events are going to occur the way God said they would. There's nothing we can do to change it. There's nothing we can do to make it happen. There's nothing we can do to keep it from happening. And like it or not, these events, it appears to me that they're going to happen in our lifetime. And that's not something to dread or resent or feel bad or sorry for ourselves for. It's something to rejoice over. And so we're going to talk about the Ezekiel 38 war today, which is the number one undeniable end-time event, something that's going to happen. And we know for sure these events that I talk about, at least the first 4 events are going to happen between 1948 and the second coming of Jesus. 4 of the events, they have to happen after 1948. Of course, you know, it hadn't happened yet. But before that, Israel was not a state, and they have to happen before the second coming of the Lord. You know, you can't be raptured after the second coming. You can't. You're not going to have the tribulation after the second coming, after the Battle of Armageddon. So it stands to reason that between 1948 and the second coming of Jesus, there's going to be a lot of things happen that we would consider end-time events. And I believe that these things are going to happen in our lifetime. So the Ezekiel 38 war, to just make it brief, and what we'll do is we'll put the 7 events on the screen. I don't want to read them out every single show because I get distracted and I go off on one or the other. So they'll just put them on the screen, the 7 end-time events in the order that I believe they will occur in. And if you believe that it happens in a different order, you can just change the numbers. It's as simple as that. But the Ezekiel 38 war, I believe it could happen at any moment, is when Russia and Turkey and Iran will join together and invade Israel from the north. And they're going to invade Israel to gather the spoils or the riches. They're going to do it for money. They're going to do it for gain. Not because they're mad at Israel necessarily. Russia's never had that problem that a lot of the Arab nations have just natural animosity toward Israel. But Russia just, I mean, if you look at what's happening to Russia right now, they're using up all of their resources on this war in the Ukraine, and they're broke. They're getting more and more poor. And so eventually they're going to have to look for how are we going to replace all these resources. And at some point, they're going to decide that going after Israel is their best option. And so Ezekiel talks about that. Now, before 1948, Israel didn't exist as a nation. Like it did in the Old Testament. You read about Israel and Jerusalem and David and all the kings. Well, all that was removed in AD 70 when Israel was invaded and Jerusalem was overrun by the Gentiles. And they were, and nearly 2,000 years, it wasn't a Jewish nation. And so some things happen, and I think this is extremely interesting. And I'm just going to read this, and I got this from End Times Made Easy by Joseph Morris, who is a friend of mine, but he wrote a book, and some of the information in this series came from that book. But this is very interesting. I didn't know this, hadn't seen this anywhere else. I'll just read it to you. In the early years of World War I, Britain faced a severe shortage of acetone. It's a solvent traditionally obtained by treating acetic acid obtained by the destructive distillation of wood. In other words, they got this substance from wood. And it took about 100 tons of wood to produce 1 ton of acetone. This was required in increasing quantities during the war for the manufacture of a propellant used by the British Army and the Royal Navy to fire its shells. So it was necessary for gunpowder. They needed this substance that they got out of trees. It had other uses, but it placed an increased demand on wood. But there was a greater problem. Before the war, Britain imported most of the acetone it needed from Germany and Austria, both of whom were on the opposite side. So they couldn't get wood to get this propellant for gunpowder. And there was a Jewish scientist named Weizmann, and he found a way to produce this acetone without using their wood. And England, in fact, what he did, the process that he came up with literally helped win World War I. Because they just weren't going to have, I mean, you could have all the shells you want. If you can't fire them, they're of no use. So England was so grateful to Weizmann that they asked him what he wanted as a reward. And he said, I want a homeland for my people. So the Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during World War I, announcing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, which was then an Ottoman regime with a small minority of Jewish people. This was this information came from Michael Fremantle in the Weizmann Contribution in Chemistry World on July 5th, 2017. In 1948, so like 30 years later, they made this Balfour Declaration, and nothing happened for 30 years. And then in 1948, all of a sudden, Israel became a nation. We all joined after the Holocaust. The world felt so guilty and so bad that they allowed Israel to become a nation again in the nation of Israel. And in 1967, Jerusalem was won back during the Six-Day War. So until these things happened, most of the prophecies we're reading in the first 4 of our undeniable end-time events, they couldn't happen until Israel became Israel again. So that was a pivotal time, and it really has helped start this clock, this end-time clock. And it went through the 50s and 60s and 70s, and we all know the history of the world and the nations and the church in these days. But now we're getting to really the end of this generation. And Jesus told his followers, when you see these things begin to come to pass, this generation will not pass away until all these things are fulfilled. We're in this generation. So in that sense, it's very exciting that we're seeing, and as we go through this, you're going to see these world rulers are actually getting lined up for this very war. And of course, it shouldn't be a surprise to us, but it is exciting to see scriptures in the Bible come alive in real time on the news in global events. It's just it's incredible. So I'm going to read to you this about this war in Ezekiel 38. This is starting in verse 1. This is the New Living Translation. And it's a message for Gog. Gog is going to be Russia, or the leader of Russia. Okay, so this is another message that came to me from the Lord. This is Ezekiel. Son of man, turn and face Gog. That would be the leader of Russia, of the land of Magog, the prince who rules over the nations of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Those are areas in Russia. Prophesy against him. Now, let me make this clear. We are not against Russians. We are not against Russia. In fact, I've been to Russia more than once. I've been to Ukraine. I've preached all over there. We love the Russian people, and we love the Russian church. We love Christians. There is no national boundaries that separate the church. So there is no animosity. I'm just reading the Bible. So I just want you to understand that. In fact, these scriptures are specifically listed to the leader of Russia, the leader. It's the leaders that make these crazy decisions, not the people in most cases. In fact, even with the invasion of Ukraine, that's happening right now. I am not angry with the Russian people today. I love the Russian people. We love all people. But the leaders are making some really crazy choices that we don't necessarily agree with. All right, so it says, give him this message from the sovereign Lord. Gog, I am your enemy. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws to lead you out with your whole army, your horses, charioteers in full armor, and a great horde armed with shields and swords. Persia, that could possibly be Iran, or possibly Iraq. Ethiopia and Libya will join you too with all their weapons. Gomer, those would be other Eastern European countries of Russia, and all of its armies will join you, along with the armies of Beth Togarmah, or Togarmah. That's Turkey. So Turkey is a big player in this, from the distant north, and many others. So we've got the players listed now, and that was through verse 16 in Ezekiel 38. And we know that the main nations here are Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And so then it says in verse 7, it says, get ready, be prepared, keep all the armies around you mobilized, and take command of them. A long time from now you will be called into action. Now this was written in Ezekiel's time, and he's talking about something that hasn't happened yet. So a long time from now you'll be called into action, which will be enjoying the peace after recovering from war, after all of its people have returned from many lands to the mountains of Israel. So he's telling us exactly what happened, is that all of these Jews are going to come back to Israel after being dispersed for so many years, almost 2,000 years. And you and your allies, a vast, awesome army, he's speaking still to Gog, will roll down on them like a storm and cover the land like a cloud. So this is going to be a tremendous invasion of Israel. Verse 10, this is what the sovereign Lord says. At that time, evil thoughts will come to your mind, and you'll devise a wicked scheme. Do you think this could happen? Think about it. Right now it's happening with Vladimir Putin. Thoughts came into his mind to take back Ukraine and to take back Crimea, and he's acted on those thoughts. So, I mean, it's just another step further for them to do this. They've already got a history of doing this. And so I mean, the stage is really set for this because there's so much prosperity in Israel. It's like a first world country. It's just blessed, and it's going to prove to be you know, a temptation that they can't resist. You will say, Israel is an unprotected land filled with unwalled villages. I will march against her and destroy these people who live in such confidence. I will go to those formerly desolate cities that are now filled with people who have returned from exile in many nations. And that has happened in Israel. It's so amazing. As I heard, I was just in a meeting the other day with Joseph Morris, who teaches end times, and he was talking about the wealth of Israel and how that little nation the size of New Jersey supplies the fruit for nearly the entire continent of Europe. I mean, and they've just got so much wealth, and they've found oil there. And that's probably going to be the key factor that really makes them a desirable target, is the vast oil reserves that are found in the nation of Israel. Verse 12, I will go to those formerly desolate cities. So they were desolate, but once it was in 1948, as the Jews moved in and they developed that nation, it's become a very wealthy nation. Just like Ezekiel said, it says, they've returned from exile in many nations. I'll capture vast armaments of plunder, for the people are rich with livestock and other possessions. Now, they think the whole world revolves around them. This is the New Living Translation. It's very, it's very interesting. Now, Joseph Morris, in his book End Times Made Easy, made this comment. In the next verse, you will see America, Australia, and the European nations that are mentioned. And here it is, verse 13. This is Russia deciding to go invade Israel. Here's going to be the reaction of Israel's supposed allies. Sheba, Saudi Arabia, and Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish, which would be Spain and other European nations. The New King James adds, and all their young lions. That's probably the United States and Australia. So these other nations, these ally nations, they're going to say this: do you really think that the armies you've gathered can rob them of silver and gold? In other words, these nations, that sounds just like us today. America's not taking a stand for Israel. It's just kind of standing on the sidelines and saying, you really think you should do this? And are you sure you want to do this? And it's not like it used to be when America stood up for Israel and said, if you attack Israel, you attack us. We're going to defend them to the last man. And we're not like that anymore. And this is what's going to happen. These nations, and maybe it's the U.S., maybe it's not, but they think the young lions would include the United States and Australia, are going to say, do you think you can do this? Do you think you can drive away their livestock and seize their goods and carry off their plunder? Man, isn't that? And that's basically, I mean, we're doing a little bit more for Ukraine, but it's not like we're standing in front of, and I'm not saying one thing or another, but I tell you, I do believe in defending Israel. Because of the place they hold in the kingdom of God. But we're not doing a whole lot as far as defending Ukraine. The world, by and large, is just watching this thing happen, and it's going to do the same thing with this war on Israel. They will not stop these armies or defend Israel. They only question them. It's just diplomacy. Ezekiel 38:13, Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish and all their young lions will say, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your army to take booty, to carry away silver and gold, and to take away livestock and goods, to take plunder? And that's exactly what is happening right now. This is something that Joseph Morris said about this. He said, Turkey's actions today are so bold they are almost unbelievable. Turkey is training Hamas in Libya. Turkey is working its way into Greece. Turkey is already in northern Syria, and Turkey is in the edge of Iraq. Technically, Turkey has Israel surrounded right now, and they've sworn to destroy Israel. So that's their neighbors. And so if Russia, a world power like that, decides to make a move like that, they're going to have they're going to have nations that'll go with them and will fight with them for that end. God himself will defend Israel while everyone watches. Verse 14, Therefore, Son of Man, prophesy against Gog, the leader of Russia. Give him the message from the sovereign Lord. When my people are living in peace in their land, and you will rouse yourself, you will come from your homeland in the distant north, that's where Russia is, all these nations are, with your vast cavalry and your mighty army, and you will attack my people Israel, covering their land like a cloud. At that time, in the distant future, I will bring you against my land as everyone watches, and my holiness will be displayed by what happens to you, Gog. Then all the nations will know that I am the Lord. Man, that is powerful. And that was written in the days of Ezekiel, long before any of this could ever, and that's why he says in a distant time. because it was a long way off, but it's not anymore. This war, in my opinion, could happen any day. It could happen at any time, and I certainly believe that it will happen in our lifetime. Notice what happens here, and it's not pretty, but you know, we're going to read end time events the way the Bible, you know, the Bible really should be rated PG-13, and some of it even more for violence, and some of it more, and so but you know, I'm far be it from me to tell God how to write His book. Now my books are rated G. You can read my books to your kids, no problem. But I'm not going to tell God how to write His book. He knows a lot more. In fact, He has an all-time bestseller. But some of this stuff is powerful. I mean, and I'm glad that God has decided to be forthcoming and upfront with us and say, here's what's going to happen. And He's doing this to get the world's attention. In fact, if I could just take a little pause here and just let you know that God is doing some things, and He will do some things in the future to get the world's attention. People that maybe we didn't reach as the church, as evangelists and preachers, people that weren't reached by the message of grace and forgiveness and love and mercy and reconciliation and deliverance. There are going to be some events that will happen that maybe not draw people the same way, but they may just scare them to their knees, and they begin to realize there's something more going on here. And you know what? I'm all for it. I want God to be God. I want God to be visible. I want God's works to be visible. Whatever He seems, you know, as necessary to do, bring it on. I'm all for it. I would never vote against God. So this war is going to happen, and He's going to use it to get the whole world's attention. Some think that this is going to set the stage for the Antichrist and the tribulation, and that's probably the case. Certainly at that point, the end time clock is going to be wound up and going full speed ahead. But because in the tribulation itself, a lot of things are going to happen in the world and world events that are going to scare people and get people's attention. And there will be a harvest of people after this Ezekiel 38 war and in the tribulation, because God's going to show His power in awesome ways. And you know what? I'm all for it. You know, I'm just a fan. I don't care what God does. I'm always going to root for God. I'm always going to be on His side. I'm always going to agree with Him. Even if I don't agree with Him, I'm going to agree with Him. Why? Because He's right. And everything He does is done right and for the right reason. And you know what? When all of this is over and we all look back on it, all of us are going to say, well, God, You did the right thing. It was perfect timing. It was done in perfect taste at the perfect level of demonstration. It's all going to be right. So if we know that going in, then we don't have to second guess. We don't have to dread these things. We don't have to worry about them. We don't have to wring our hands. And you know what? Let me just address the elephant in the room. Every generation's been hearing Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming, but you know what? He couldn't have really come before 1948. But I'm just telling you, He is coming. And you may be sitting there thinking, but why? Why does He have to come in my lifetime? That's not a bad thing. Let's get over that feeling and let's welcome the King back to take over the world. Let's not feel like, you know what, I wish the world wasn't so turbulent right now. If we could just go back to the good old days. We're probably not going back there. But we can get with the program and we can get into these teachings and say, you know what, bring it on, Lord. I know what's coming. And I'm excited because it's just going to, more and more people are going to find the truth. There's nothing that God is doing is because He's mad and He's just had enough and He's just going to get even with the world. He's just going to teach them a lesson. God doesn't operate that way. Anything that He does is for our good. And there are probably people alive right now that won't respond to any other measures. And so the Lord's just going to do everything He can to wake up a sleepy world, a blinded world, a disturbed world, a wayward world, a rebellious humanity, and try to bring them into the fold. And this Ezekiel 38 war is one of those things, and I think it's one of the first. I believe it's the first event that's going to happen that is going to shake the world as we know it. And man, if we're here, I believe we will be. Let's get ready to gather in the harvest. Let's prepare to explain to people, hey, here's what happened. You don't mess with God's anointed. I started this section out in my notes with Israel is here to stay. And so I know there have been nations that have vowed to wipe Israel off the face of the map. It's not going to happen. They are back. They're back by the command of God, not the Balfour Agreement, not just the Balfour Agreement, but by the command of God. And they are not going away. In fact, the things that happen in the tribulation is God dealing with Israel, or the way Joseph Morris says it, He's courting Israel. He's taking them through step by step, and He's revealing Himself to a wayward nation and His covenant people. And it's a beautiful thing, even though it may not be rated PG-13. There may be some violence beyond what we're used to, but thank God He knows what He's doing. Well, I've got to get through this first point in the next session. So you don't want to miss that. We're going to get through the rest of this. But get the study notes. It's all in here. We've got it well documented. We'll give credit, we'll give the resources and all that so you can follow up if you want. And of course, the outline is going to go along with the teaching. And so I knew this was going to be a lot of information to put into 20 sessions, but we're going to give you an opportunity to get these on USB or to download them. And but the study notes are going to be very complete, probably the most extensive study notes that I've ever put together. And you're not going to get this anywhere else. I mean, as far as I know, this method of teaching end times is original. So get the study notes; they're free, and I'm probably not going to do a book on this. So this will be the closest thing to a book you can get on this teaching, at least from our ministry. So help yourself; they're free of charge. You can call our helpline and we'll mail them to you, or you can download them straight from the website, and then you can follow along with the rest of this teaching. You'll know where I'm going if you get those notes, and so that'll be very, very helpful to you. Until then, remember this: the good news is so good, the bad news doesn't matter.
End-time teaching has always been controversial. In this series, you'll learn the 7 end-time events that will happen according to Scripture, and why for Christians, the good news just keeps getting better. Call our helpline at 918-749-7744 Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time.
I love Greg. I love his sense of humor. I love how he bring out the word. I just love Greg. Awesome man of God.
Immediately he became a favorite teacher of mine because he delivers the Word of God with such warmth and balance and great clarity.
He's just straight to the point and down to earth, and just to let go, be happy.